If you have a true scary story you want to share with the channel, well, you can once again go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way. Things appear to be working, so yay. And thank you. Since I was a kid, I always enjoyed going on road trips with my family. That love only grew as I got older and I wanted to go everywhere that I could. However, you kind of start running out of money if you're not working, so I had this brilliant idea to try trucking. I started out just doing ride-alongs. I was just the entertainer basically, while a more seasoned trucker would drive. I would occasionally drive, but it was more on the open and flat roads when there wasn't harsh weather. It was a blast. I enjoyed every minute of it, so I did everything I had to until I had a truck of my own. I worked for an independent contractor, so I would be hauling supplies for a lot of different companies. But the truck was mine, and I made it look everything like me. It was a royal purple. I even went a little extra on the inside. I was practically going to be living in it, so I might as well make it look like the world's smallest studio apartment, right? Now I know I haven't been a trucker nearly as long as some of my coworkers, but I have still loved every minute of it. Okay, well, most of it. Sometimes there are those unavoidable situations that I could live without, but for the most part, it was a dream job for me. Now there were a few times that I didn't love it as much, but I can't even include them in the unavoidable parts. These were more so just bizarre or weird, so instead of complaining about them, I decided I would share them with the world. This first one happened to me back in 2019. It was a hot and beautiful July driving across New Mexico. Also, one of my favorite states to drive through. I had my windows down, was enjoying the warm air and probably singing along to something. It was around 5 or 6 p.m. I remember this because I was debating on stopping for food when I first noticed it. A truck in my side mirror. It looked dark in color, but it was pretty far behind me. I could also tell that it was gaining on me. As it got closer, something about it kept catching my eye. I didn't realize it until it was right behind me. It looked a lot like mine. It was purple and it had the silver pinstriping down the center. I thought, huh, what a coincidence. Then the truck passed me and I could see the box trailer that it was hauling. It was funny at the time, because the logo on it was like the opposite of mine. I don't want to mention the actual partner I work with, but basically, I was hauling stuff for something like Waterworks Unlimited, whereas they were hauling for Desert Dynamics. Again, I thought it was amusing and left it at that. It passed me and it slowly faded in the distance. Later on, I had finally decided to make a stop for food. When I got back on the road again at the intersection to get on the highway, I once again saw what I assumed to be the same truck that I had seen earlier. Looking at it more, it was bizarre to see just how much it was the same as my truck. It was the same royal purple and silver. It was even a Kenworth like mine. And while I did get the custom paint job, anyone could have chosen those colors. But what are the odds that it would look the exact same? Be the same model? And even have the same sticker in the window that I had. The sticker is a Moogle riding on a chocobo. If you've ever played Final Fantasy, you know what those are. It's so very specific that it blew me away to see it. I couldn't believe it. Their windows were pretty dark though, so I couldn't see the driver, unfortunately. I was hoping they would have noticed too, and maybe we would have had a little moment, but my light turned green before then. I just held on to the moment and continued with my drive, excited to share this story with my friends. Alas, I would have one more run-in with this truck. This time, It was in Arizona. I had stayed at a truck stop overnight and got up to use the restroom and freshen up before I headed out again. But as I opened my door and stepped out, I saw that purple truck, parked a few spaces over from mine. This time, I had nothing stopping me. I walked right over to the truck to see it up close. I was shocked. It was the exact same as mine. The Kenworth W900, purple with silver, the Final Fantasy sticker in the window, and it also had a small rust spot on the bottom of the passenger side door, just like mine. Seriously, what are the odds of that? I had to get a picture of it to compare and show as proof, but as I was snapping one, the door to the cabin opened up. A small woman steps out, with short brown hair and green eyes, wearing a black ghost face hoodie. Guess who else is a small, short, brown-haired girl with green eyes, wearing a ghost-faced hoodie? I cannot make this up. I knew what she had to be thinking because I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't know what to say out loud until she did. She said that I had a nice truck, and I started laughing. Thankfully, she found the humor in it too and confirmed that she was indeed the same truck I saw the other 2 times. We talked about where we were heading and all of our similarities, and even shared a few photos. She said it was also a custom paint job that her husband had surprised her with. I was missing the husband in that equation. I got a loan to get my truck all customized and fixed up. But other than looking identical, and our trucks matching to a T, the rest of us that we discussed were actually the exact opposite. She was married with 2 kids. I was single. I lived in Texas. She was from North Dakota on a long haul, and she hated the heat. There were some other similarities and stark differences, but it was just so crazy to experience. It was like it was me from some sort of parallel universe. I wanted to add her on Facebook or something just to keep in touch, but she didn't offer, and neither did I. I don't know if she felt the same way, but part of me thought that maybe we weren't supposed to run into each other. Maybe if I did become friends with her, it could mess things up. So I just took this as one of those crazy experiences that I'm glad that I could witness, and we went on our ways. I wouldn't mind running into her again, though. My second experience that I wanted to tell you about was still strange, but also a bit more creepy. This time it was last year, around November. I was heading to Oregon, and it was already pretty chilly, and being used to warm weather, I was pretty bundled up. While driving along, I looked over and noticed that my passenger side mirror was off. I'm very particular with my mirrors, and it drives me crazy when they get moved. It was going to bother me until I fixed it. I had already been driving for a few hours, and I thought that I could stop for a quick break, stretch some, and fix my mirrors, and also have a snack while I'm at it. The road I was on had some decent traffic passing by, and it had a good-sized shoulder, so I decided to pull over. Once stopped, I grabbed one of my meal bars and got out of my truck to walk around a bit. My driver's side mirror looked fine, so I walked around the back of my truck and to my passenger side. Now, the problem with adjusting those mirrors, and why it's such a big deal to me, is because it's not as simple as adjusting the mirrors on your little sedan. You have to adjust it some, get in and check, adjust some more, ad nauseum. I can practically zone out at this point trying to adjust it. But then, as I was fiddling with the mirror and picking at something I spotted on my truck, I heard the familiar sound of tires slowly creeping upon gravel. I looked over just enough to see a small black car stop in front of my truck. I thought it was a cop at first, but once I did a double take, it was obvious that it wasn't. My second guess was that it was just your average guy wanting to help. I got that quite often as a woman. The fact that he didn't stop to do something in his car and approached me first told me this too. I watched my peripheral as he approached my truck. He stopped by my front passenger side, and I waited for him to say something, but he never did. I finished tweaking my mirror and got in to check it once more. It looked right, so then my attention was turned to this guy that was now walking closer to my truck door. I was hoping he wouldn't, but part of me was wondering if he was going to step on the side to look in or even open my door. But to my surprise, he didn't. I watched him walk down the side of my truck, just looking at it like he was inspecting it. He didn't touch anything, he just looked at it. But watching him then was when I realized what he was wearing. He was in denim shorts and a Hawaiian shirt that was clearly unbuttoned as it was waving in the wind. As I mentioned, it was November in Oregon, and this guy was dressed like he was sitting on the beach in July. I know everyone can handle temperatures different, but that was the first time I'd seen something that extreme, so it definitely had me raising an eyebrow. I watched him walk towards the back of my truck and out of my sight. I got a little suspicious at that point because I didn't know what he was doing back there, so I got out of my truck again and casually walked to the back to see him once more, just standing there and staring at it. I asked him if there was something that I could help him with, and he didn't even look over at me. I started to become a bit more paranoid at that point. I had heard stories about truckers being robbed, and since he was just staring at the back doors, I was concerned on if he was going to try something. He had a normal-sized car though, so it's not exactly like he had the room to take what I was hauling. I again asked him if he needed something, otherwise I needed to go, trying to sound a bit more firm in my statement. He then looked over at me and just gave the largest fake-looking smile I had ever seen. I gave him quite the look back, like a "what the hell are you doing" type look. I told him that I was going to leave and started walking back to my door. I was only a few steps away from it when he finally spoke. "Bye, Rachel." That stopped me dead in my tracks because, yeah, my name is Rachel. Good guess? Or how the hell did he know my name? There was nothing on my truck or the hoodie that I was wearing that had my name on it. I stared at him for several seconds as he went back to smiling. I asked him what he said, knowing very well what he said, but he didn't respond. I wanted to ask him how he knew my name, but something felt off. Maybe this was a setup and a distraction that I was about to fall into. I wasn't willing to take the chances, so I jumped in, quickly checked the back, and then locked the doors. At this time, the man had walked to the driver's side, still standing towards the back, and continuing to smile at me. As I drove away, I watched him in my mirror, continuing to stand in the same place, never moving, never waving. He just stood there and watched me drive away, smiling the entire time. I don't know what the hell that was all about. I never ran into him again, and I never heard anything about anyone else having a similar experience. And while I keep thinking that maybe he was just messing around with someone on the shoulder, I can't get past the fact that he knew my name. So I guess I'll never know what his true motive was, but I'm glad it wasn't anything beyond his creepy smile and questionable winter wardrobe. I've been a trucker for a good 24 years now, and I've seen, heard, and hell, even smelled some crazy things on my time on the road. From bad road rage cases, to damn near being the cause to the end of a high-speed chase, and finding some pretty weird things on the side of the road. I feel like I've seen it all. But this one thing I experienced back in 2008 still has me shrugging my shoulders with no explanation in sight. It was about mid-December. I was on a pretty desolate stretch of highway in northern Montana, heading to my second pickup in North Dakota. The weather was getting pretty bad due to a hellacious snowstorm that was on the way, and kind of in the midst of. The roads were already pretty well covered, and with the wind and the snowfall, you had to be very careful in a big rig. One wrong move, or one jerk not giving you enough room, could make for a pretty bad day. I was fairly used to driving in this stuff at that point, so I knew the steps to take to control and stay in control of the situation. I was a stickler for rules and following all the safety protocols, and because of that, I was cool and calm, knowing that I would be okay. I was listening to music until around 2 a.m. when I started getting some chatter on my radio. Sometimes truckers will share road conditions or just shoot the breeze to keep each other awake. It's always on a random channel, separate from our normal dispatch channels, but I like to tune in at times and join in on the antics. But this time it caught my attention for a couple of reasons. The first one was that I don't remember changing my channel. I still had it on my dispatch, or so I thought, so it was odd to not hear Rhonda's voice. And, leading into the second reason, it was a man's voice, and instead of things that I would normally hear from Rhonda, or the other guys messing around, this guy's voice was low and gravelly, and all I heard was, "Is anyone there?" At first, I didn't reply, waiting to see what was going on, but there was no reply after his third hello, so I answered. "Hey, this is Chief. What's up, boss?" What I didn't expect was his response. "Help. Please, anyone?" I was immediately concerned. Was this another trucker that was maybe in an accident? Or maybe there was a medical emergency, so I asked if he was okay, and again, all I got was, "Please, it's so cold. Truck won't start." Now I was worried for him. If his truck wouldn't start, maybe he was in an accident, or maybe it just broke down. But the fact that he was complaining about being cold made me think he was exposed to the elements. This was a pretty large and empty strip of highway, so who knows if anyone else has even been through there since this accident. I knew that I had to stop. I knew that I had to find this guy and help. "What's your 20, boss?" I asked him. After a pause, he finally responded. "Mile marker 247. Please don't leave me." I knew where that was. I told him I was about 12 miles out and to hang tight, and he responded with, "Don't forget about me." I switched back to my dispatch and told them about the trucker and the accident, and said I was stopping for them, and they confirmed that they heard me. When I approached 247, I slowed down and started looking a lot closer to the roads and shoulder. I was expecting to see a rig somewhere, but I didn't see one. I thought maybe he was toward the end of 247, so I slowed and pulled over to the shoulder. I tried to radio the guy again, remembering what channel I was on, but there was nothing there but static. I waited a few minutes and then started to put it back into drive to go further down the road when I finally got a response. "Please, I'm cold." I told him that I couldn't see anyone or anything from where I was. I had been keeping an eye out and slowed down when I hit 246, but there was nothing around. I knew that I hadn't passed anyone or anything. Even in a snowstorm, it's kind of hard to miss a big rig. I again radioed to him saying I was here and asked for a better idea of where he was. "I see you, Chief. Don't you see me?" I was confused. I definitely did not see anyone around, so I got out of my truck and looked around again. I don't know why I thought I would be able to see any better out there, but I certainly couldn't. It was dark, the wind was painfully cold, but the silence was deafening. There wasn't a single soul in sight, so where the hell was this guy? As I walked back to my truck, I started to get a little annoyed. What if someone was just pulling a prank? Now they've interrupted my route and got me out in the cold for no reason. So I called out to the guy one more time, but I was probably a little more angry with my tone. I told him that I hadn't seen anything and that I didn't appreciate being messed with. I then tried to ask for their name or who they were contracting with, but I didn't get anything back. This only irritated me more. I felt that they were messing with me, and that's why they weren't answering. I ended up calling it into my dispatch, mentioning a distress call I heard, but that I couldn't see anybody. Just as a precaution to see if they could either send an emergency vehicle to check it out, or something like that, but that was it. I tried looking. I was starting to feel like a dumbass for actually stopping, but at least if it was real, I sensed someone who could probably do more than what I could. I started my truck back up and slowly pulled off the shoulder. Now, at this point, I was back on with my dispatch channel. I had no reason to turn back, but yet, there his voice was again.
"Thanks anyways, Chief."
And that was it. I tried to ask him what he meant. Was he messing with me? Just give me some kind of answer, but there was nothing. Not until I heard Rhonda's voice asking me to repeat what I had said. Apparently, Rhonda had heard what I was saying to the other guy, but she also heard the guy thank me. He seemed to be on the same channel now as us. She asked me if that was the guy that I was talking about and tried to get him to respond, but it was back to nothing. He never spoke to us again. Rhonda said that she would pass along the information, being even more willing to, I guess, after hearing the guy for herself. Rhonda listens to all of us frequently. She knows our voices. She told me that she did not recognize his voice either. As for me, I just kept on going, thinking back to that whole situation over and over. Fast forward past the long, boring part of the route, and I'm now heading back home to Idaho, and I made a stop in Montana again for some breakfast. While there, I was reading a newspaper that nearly made me lose my mind. There was a story about a truck that had run off the road and flipped down into an embankment. The driver was dead by the time anyone arrived. No one knows why it happened or what caused the accident, and it said the investigation was still ongoing as to his cause of death, as they were still unsure if it was what may have caused the accident, or if he died because of it. The problem I had with this was that the newspaper was older, about a week or two. I don't remember the exact date, but the story mentioned the truck and the man was found at mile marker 247. A man died in that same location that I was in about a week before I was there. I definitely didn't see any trucks on the road, on the shoulder, or in the embankment. Was this a new accident? Was this someone who knew the story and was trying to play a really sick joke? Or was it the man that died? Was he still out there trying to come to terms with his own demise? I brought the newspaper back with me to show some folks, and they all seemed to think it was a prank, but I believe in spirits. There are things out there that we don't understand, because we can't and probably never will, and quite honestly, shouldn't. Some things just need to be left alone. And part of me wonders if maybe he was trying to call for help one last time. Maybe he was unable to the first time, and maybe he was trying to replay the events? I don't know for sure, and I know that I never will know, but I hope the sincerity in his voice when he thanked me was real. I hope if that really was the case that I was able to give him some relief in knowing that maybe he wasn't alone in his last moments, and that someone was really there, or trying to be there for him. I've been a long-haul trucker for over 2 decades now, and I've learned that I quite enjoy listening to podcasts such as yours and other similar ones over music. It seems to keep my mind more occupied and thinking, especially on those long, boring stretches of road. But sometimes us truckers have our own stories to share, and I would like to share one of those with you today. This happened when I was younger, late 20s and around 2012. I know it was quite some time ago, but the events were so bizarre, I will never forget the details. I was much more spry and bright at that age. The job was still somewhat new to me, and I was excited. I always wanted to travel all over, and this was a good way to do it. I smiled and talked to anyone that I could. I sampled different restaurants and local stores, and took even more pictures than I knew what to do with. Around that time, hitchhikers were also pretty common at the start of long stretches of highway, and while it was still risky, some people tried to find the good in others and to help out. I was often one of those people. Thankfully, I never really had a bad experience. Most people were more than willing to tell me how they got there, where they've been, their regrets, and accomplishments. I always enjoyed practically living through them as I listened to their stories. I had a few people who weren't interested in talking, which was fine. Even though they didn't talk much, if at all, I knew they still appreciated the ride. But there was one experience with a hitchhiker that I picked up that was nothing like any of my other passengers. It was around midnight, and I was, as usual, on a long haul from Sacramento to Denver. I could get by with only a few hours of sleep, and I was trying to push myself to the next stop, which would take me close to an hour. As I drove along, I had to do a double take as I saw someone ahead on the shoulder walking along. It was strange because it was midnight and on a long stretch of empty highway. Where did they even come from? But as I approached them, I was shocked to realize that it was a woman. Women weren't uncommon, necessarily, but we typically saw them closer to rest stops, diners, and the sort. And not in the middle of nowhere in the dark. Now, of course, most might think that's pretty suspicious, but against my better judgment, I stopped. I didn't even hesitate because I felt like she needed help. I stopped shortly after where she stood, and I saw her running towards my truck in the mirror. Unlike others who ask where I'm going and if it's okay to tag along, she jumps in immediately, slamming the door shut and locking it. She looked distressed and like she had been out there for a while. She was wearing a large sweater and shorts with no shoes. Her hair looked like it hadn't been brushed for days, and she was breathing really fast. "Drive," she said. "Please just drive, don't stop." I hadn't even been able to say anything to her yet, but she sounded pretty scared. I put my truck back in drive and got on the road. We drove in silence for a few minutes, and I watched as she kept checking the mirror. I asked her if she was alright or if I needed to call for someone on the radio, but she just shook her head. "No, I just want to get out of here before they catch up, please." I know some people might just think she was crazy, but if she was willing to get into a truck with a big and mean-looking trucker, then she must have really been desperate. I was certainly less worried for my safety, and more for hers. Was someone after her? And who? Why? I tried asking her who she was running from and what was going on, but she was in tears at this point, still shaking her head. I dropped it, not wanting to push her, and told myself that I just needed to find the first police station and take her there. We drove in silence for about 10 minutes or so, when she finally spoke again. "They tried to make me sick, so I couldn't run away, but I just spat it back out. They want me to be like them. They don't want me to be human." Okay, so maybe the next stop was Crazy Town, right? But there was something in her voice. Something that made me think this was a real fear. I didn't want to scare her and wanted to keep her calm, so I told her that she was safe now and that she could stay with me as long as she wanted. She nodded and wiped her face and then went back to staring out the window or at the mirror. It wasn't much longer that I saw lights in my mirror as a car caught up with us. I ignored it at first, cars happened, and eventually it would pass me anyways. But surprisingly, they never did. In fact, they honked. The woman immediately sat back up and looked in the mirror. "Oh my god, they found me. They're here." I tried asking her who, but she was hysterical at this point. I was not getting through to her, and for a moment, I was worried about who I had just picked up. but as the car continued to honk behind me, I knew I had to do something about it. Okay, maybe part of that was more the curiosity in me, but still. I didn't want someone following behind me and honking. So, I pulled over. As soon as the woman noticed this, she started screaming at me to not stop and to not let them take her. I didn't want to touch her to make things worse on her, but I held my hands up and kept repeating myself. I told her, "I'm not going to let them take you, nor will they be able to even open the doors. I'm just going to try to get them to leave us alone." She continued to cry, but otherwise calmed down. I watched as two men wearing black got out of the car, and they approached each side of my truck. The guy on my side reached my door first, and I kid you not, the guy was wearing sunglasses. It was the middle of the night. He stepped up onto my truck, took his glasses off, and smiled at me. I cracked the window just enough to hear him, but I could already hear her breathing start to shake. The man just said, "Evening," and she lost it. It's them, please don't let them take me." The guy continued smiling. "Thank you for picking her up. She ran off when we were trying to give her a bath, and we worried about where she would end up due to her mental state." The guy said something about taking her home, and before I could even respond, the woman started screaming again. "I'm not crazy. I know who I am and what I was doing before they grabbed me. They're not even human. Why can't you see that?" There was a brief moment where I was caught in between, and I didn't know what to do. I shouldn't have even stopped in the first place, per my company's policy. But now I have a woman screaming that these men were not human, and the guy's claiming she's crazy. I know a lot of people would probably side with the men, probably, but the look in her eyes was pure terror. It wasn't of someone out of their mind. It wasn't the sight of someone lying or delusional. She was pressed against my side, trying to avoid both windows, and she looked terrified. And maybe some might call me crazy too, but something definitely did not feel right, and my fight or flight was kicking in. So, I took a deep breath to calm my nerves and told the men that she was free to go with them, if she wanted to. The guy on the passenger side said nothing, but the guy on my side chuckled and tried to make a comment about how she was required to go with them. I cut him off and said that it was her choice. She said she wanted to stay with me, and the man said something about calling his superior, so I challenged him. I told him to go for it, that I would radio into mine as well and let them know my location, and that I had a situation. That seemed to speak to him because he went back to his smile, and then they said that they would catch up to her later, and thanked me for again picking her up. Then they both walked off back to the car and sat there. I was too nervous to leave, thinking they would just continue to follow me, so I waited too. I could feel the poor girl next to me shaking, and I could hear her rapid breaths as we sat there for probably a good 15 to 20 minutes before the car finally left. I still called it in since I had been idle for some time, and I let them know that something came up, but that was it. The car slowly drove by us, and after I could no longer see their lights, I started my rig back up. As we drove, the woman gradually calmed down and thanked me through her quiet sobs. I tried to act like I wasn't equally freaked out, and just gave a shrug saying that it was no big deal. I didn't want to push her and get her worked up again, but I seriously had a lot of questions. Why was she in the middle of nowhere on a pretty empty highway? Why were those guys looking for her, and most importantly, why did she think they weren't human? I know the most sane answer was probably that she was mentally unstable, but like I said, the fear in her eyes was real, and it was damn near palpable. I asked her if there was some place that she wanted me to take her, or if she just wanted to go as far as she could with me, and she chose the latter. She fell asleep shortly after, and I decided to keep driving because there was no way that I was sleeping now. She slept in small bursts, constantly waking up to any bump or loud talking from my radio, and would look around. Finally, that morning as the sun was rising, she asked if I could drop her off at a police station. I agreed, without asking any questions, and picked up my radio to see if dispatch could tell me where the closest one was in the city that I was about to hit. I just gave them a line about finding a wallet in a parking lot, and they gave me directions. When I got to the station, the woman told me that she didn't want to risk my life, in case they found out who I was, and tried to do the same to me for helping her. She said that she would call one of her friends from the station to help get her home. She then shook my hand, said that her name was Gloria, and thanked me again, and then she left. I waited until she walked into the station, and then I waited a few more minutes, making sure she didn't come back out screaming something again. After she left, I won't lie to you, I was worried for her. I wanted to make sure she was okay and would be okay. But I was also left with a ton of questions. Was there any truth to her statements about those guys not being human? Was the feeling of dread I got when they approached just my fight or flight? Or was there something more to it, and to her claims? I don't think that I will ever know, but hopefully, wherever she is today, she's safe and happy. So that, my friends, was a collection of some scary trucker or truck driver stories, as I think I put it on the thumbnail this time around. A bit different in the title, which is fine. A bit different in the stories, too. Two of them were more, weird than scary, which is okay. We here at the As the Raven Dreams podcast, we strive on the weird. We feed on it. It keeps us fed. Yeah. That was stupid. Anyways, scary trucker stories. Hopefully you all enjoyed them. If you did, please do consider hitting that like button. That'd be awesome. Just go into the video and hit like. Tell the algorithm that you enjoy my stories, my videos, that you want more of them. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, you can also consider subscribing. Never, ever expected, but always appreciated. Subscribing helps the channel grow. Fun fact. And the more the channel grows, the more it gets pushed. It's a silly thing, this algorithm thing really is, but the more people watch my videos, the more people like the videos, the more people subscribe, the more it pushes to other people, and they can like the videos and subscribe and so forth. The other thing that really helps is commenting. Commenting. I'm gonna really need my voice to stop cracking. It's still happening. It's nowhere near as frequent and not having as many issues, but still having some problems. Is what it is. Life goes on. We'll be okay. Hopefully. Leave a comment on the video down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do let me know. If not, that's okay too. You can send in your stories to astheravendreams.com. That'd be great. You can also email them to me, astheravendreams@gmail.com. Or subreddit, which is r/theravensdream. Someone told me I should open up my P.O. box to story submissions, and I guess that's a reason to have the P.O. box. It exists, if y'all know the P.O. box number. I've told you before, but yeah. Anyways. What else is there to talk about? Nothing, we're good. Oh, you can listen on Audible, Spotify, anywhere else if you don't want to listen on YouTube. Yeah. Anyways, friends, hope you all have a beautiful weekend. Hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are important, that you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my lovely friends, much love, sleep well.